Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 100 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. All right, I wanted to, before I start anything with the angel and all that, I wanted to give y'all a perspective of the studio because I want this video series more than anything to be completely true and authentic. I don't want to have anything that's smoke and mirrors where a buggered up stone disappears, another one takes its place. Because there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube where they'll produce multiple pieces, whether it's stone or whatever. I don't know. I don't watch enough stone ones because they just don't click with me. But there's a lot of stuff where they do multiple pieces in order to get a good result. And then they tell you that, but I want you to see that this is, I don't have the option to just go grab another 4-ton block of stone and just start all over again. That ain't happening. So, but before I go forward, I haven't done this yet, and I want to make sure to try to go through and name my masters so that it's part of this series so that y'all understand people that have had a pretty serious influence on me over the years in terms of stone. And there's other people I've worked under when I apprenticed as a chef and worked in different restaurants that taught me a lot of things in terms of apprenticing that prepared me to go into the stone apprenticeship and really take advantage of it. Because I think if it had been easier, if I'd figured it out when I was 18 and bouncing around just a few miles at the house there, just a few miles from the studio, and had gone and started carving then, it would have been pretty easy. I don't think I would have appreciated it the same way as I did finding it years later. My master sculptor, Gary Sassi, owns Celestial Memorial Sculpture Studio there in Barre, Vermont on Willie Street. And his father, Gino Sassi, started it after World War II. And Gary is very unique. Gary and George Krajanowicz, another one of the sculptors in Barre, are the only two sculptors in Barre that I hold in the same esteem because they open their doors for so many people like me to say, yeah, I'll give you a shot, come on in. When other sculptors in Barre that may or may not be better literally told me to get the blank out of their studio, to leave them blank alone. I don't want to talk with you, you can't do it, this is harder than you think. I met people, even at Gary's studio, that wouldn't tell me they were a sculptor when I was coming in. They say, yeah, this is a lot harder than you think it is. You don't just walk in and do this. And then later on they go, where'd you learn to do this? Man, people don't just walk in and do it like you do. But Gary opened doors for me that he says, yeah, he says, if you can do this kind of work in stone, I'll give you a shot, come on back. And it was years before I got back there. And then after I got there, I worked beside Andy Hebert, my cousin, and we didn't realize we were family for about a week, and then Ma visited and recognized him because he looks like a Hebert and he's from Williamstown. And so all of a sudden now I'm Andy's cousin and I'm his legacy. He just taught me everything, and we did it all. And Gary and Andy are pivotal. Then there's Giuliano Cecchinelli. He's the old man. He's the old Italian. He's the dinosaur, the last one, whatever you want to call it. And Giuliano was much more reserved, and over the years has become a really great, I don't even know what the word is. It's not just inspiration. He lives and breathes it. He does stone. That's what he does. That's all he does. And he simply, as I persevered and kept doing it, he accepted me. And, the day that he went, he always says, he says, no. He says, they never tell you whether it's good or bad. I tell you if I like it or not, because everybody can say that and you're not going to offend anybody. That's your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. When you say it's good or it's bad, it's a judgment call. And that's only got a special place. You can't just throw that out there. And after we worked I cut stone for years and years, and Giuliano told me I did a good job. the fireworks went off. And he just kind of had that look in his eye when he said it, because he wanted me to understand that I'd reached a point that now he felt like I was enough I had achieved a point where I could be judged by someone else in the craft, and he did it out of respect. And so it's just amazing. I gave him my t-shirt one time, and he says, "Oh, it's good, communism." And I don't know, he says, "We need to stick together." He says, "This is great." And so he was laughing because the whole thing with Barry is, you got to understand, it was a very tumultuous place back in the early 1900s with anarchists and communists and socialists and everything. And it's not like the games on TV they play now and public stuff, and the Sex Pistols are singing about anarchy. Now, these are actual government, political parties where people were having movements and they wanted to organize and run it that way. And so, but Gary and Giuliano and Andy were pivotal. Angelo Ambrosini, mentioned Angelo, he gave me his pointing machine in 2007 when we were protesting the outsourcing of the Martin Luther King statue that, they said nobody in America could cut. And Angelo says, it's like saying we never existed. We can cut that stone, it's easy. It's just a big stone. George said the same thing when they talked to him about it. But that's another story, it's on my website. But Angelo supported me for all these years. He sent me a Christmas card a couple years before he died and said, I really thought you'd make it. You did it. You were really doing it. And he says, you were why we put so much work into this, to teach you and show you how to do this stuff. And then in the studio, when I got there, was this, he's a professional, he's a fine artist and sculptor named Jim Sardonis. And he did the whale's tails there in Vermont that have been quite famous. He installed them back around 88, 89. Jim showed me a side of this business that had nothing to do with the industry and helped me understand some of the art perspective on it in terms of galleries and money and commissions and customer base and stuff like that. And it was really wonderful to be exposed to that because Jim operated in a very different world, but his world touched our world there in the studio. So that was really cool, but Jim had a huge influence on me. Bernie Scott made our tools. He was retired, lived lived just not far from the studio. And he was an old tool man, and he'd known, knew he was really close with Gary and whatever. And known Andy for years. Because Barry's small, everybody knows everybody for the most part. But Bernie really helped me see, about the utility of making tools. And so when I came down here, after I talked with with Ezra down in Elberton about tipping tools the way he did, I put it together with what I learned from Bernie and was able to set right up and start doing my tools. Ryan Mays came into the studio there with Gary a year or so before I was done, and he brought in a lot of different ideas in terms of the modeling and the casting, the rubber work, doing silicone molds, with just out of the tube silicone. That's all from Ryan. Ryan worked at a foundry down in Arkansas where he's from with somebody, and that's how they did it, and he brought it up, and it was better than the waste molds that we normally did, and it put me in a position to be able to move forward. Dario Rossi down here in Alberton, he was master sculptor in Alberton for years. He was recruited over from Italy at the same time by the Comalis. They went over and I talked with Frank. Down south it's Comolis, and up north it's Comali. Depends on who you're talking to, what the pronunciation is. But he said they went over and found Dario and Dante, and Dario says they're cousins, and I assume they're related just like I'm related to half the people in Vermont because the family's been there forever. But Dante went to Barry, and his son married my cousin, and then Dario was here in Elberton, and he worked with Mr. Richard Cecchinelli, who retired in 79 or 80 and was dead within 6 months. I never met Mr. Cecchinelli, but he was the master in Elberton when Dario came over, and they worked together for about a decade. And then Dario was the last trained sculptor down there before I came along. bought Dario's tools just as he retired and went to work here in the studio. And I'm sure there's other people, but those are really my masters. Those are really, I mean, Gary and Giuliano and Andy and, I mean, Bernie, Dario, you know, he gave me some advice. You know, we didn't ever work together. He was done. He said, "Oh, Granite, he's dead for me. I don't know, do granite. I paint." And he is gone and he's painting. You know, Gary and Andy and Giuliano and Angelo, they really made this happen for me. And I want to dedicate this video especially, if not this whole series, to them. Because it's just been tremendous. So, but anyways, I want to show you what I'm doing so that there's no smoke and mirrors. I got to pick the base up. I'm probably going to move it a foot or two forward and set it down just to make sure I've got plenty of room to handle and move things around. I've got to pick up the die and flip it over to work on the other side. Something I learned with a project years ago, I did a 6-foot crucifix. I didn't think about it when I was quoting it, but it had the model set kind of like where the clay is set right now, and then I had the stone over here. Well, I pointed that with a pointing machine. I didn't plan on all the walking from one side all the way around to the other side, all the way around back, and it added weeks and weeks to the schedule. So I'm going to see if I might be able to, if I can flip this over and have the die high enough to work on it and possibly have the plaster on it, sort of like it is now, because I'll be carving this side, to see if I can reach everything. I don't know that it's going to work, but I'm going to try. I got to do some work on the clay. It's warming up here. I did put all the butterflies and wires and stuff they do on a lot of the clay when they show you all the books and how you do it. Because this is work I do as little as I have to do when I'm doing work. I want it to be great, but I don't want to work twice as hard if I don't have to. And I did get her cast, and part of her fell off. So I got to redo it. I'll just redo it, you know, and it'll give me a break from when I'm pointing this up. I got to pick up tools and pick up stuff from the open house that's just been sitting and lingering, put the tent away, and get to work. But we're getting ready to start swinging compasses, and then from the compasses we'll do some direct carving as we clean everything up. And once I'm happy with where her body is, then we'll index the face on, the head on, and put it where we want it to be, and we'll carve the head with a pointing machine. And you know, and I'm in my mind this will all go perfect. You know, I hope it will. We'll find out. You know, you know, Michelangelo wasn't a god. He was a man. He was really good at what he did. But if you flip the Pieta's face around, she's just as drunk or had a stroke as 2/3 of the stuff I cut. So it doesn't make me feel as bad. I'm having trouble with balancing out symmetry on the left side and the right side of the face, because even masters like Michelangelo, we're just mere mortals. So let's see what we can get together and make this happen and do it on camera all the way, just like we did this. You know, normally we put a few saw cuts on it, and I could have just gunnered in there and sawed 2/3 of this sculpture right out, and we could have cut in here to this bottom line and pitched that right off, and this would have been done really quick. But if you do that, you pitch in your corner, and it carries under and breaks off part of your margin or your check on your cove. And what are you going to do? Okay, I showed you what to do. You can do the whole thing. And that's the point. We're going to use all of these skills pretty much except polishing, because I know there's nothing polished on that. We're going to use everything else to cut this job. So let's see how it goes, and we'll be back here in a few minutes with the magic of video, and I'll try to get the studio picked up. It's important to keep all of your chips ripped up. Even with a soft floor, a little chip, a little stone can cause the edge to break. So we'll have to be careful, especially with that big stone, because it's really heavy, it'll push through. You just rake out the stones and put the dirt back. Always used to be a good day when Gary brings you new dirt. Okay, now you got to do some pretty serious decision making. This is where your judgment comes into play. We've got to figure out exactly where the stone is secure. So I'm going to go on here. Mark this side. Going to look at the joint here. Now I've got a drill hole right here on the very corner and a little bit of a line here, and I can't tell if it's just dirt, it's a line. If it might be a crack where it's right next to a drill hole, there's a good chance it's a crack. So I'm going to come inboard of that because I can. Should still be. See, that gets us just under 5 feet. And this is the short side on the die. This gets us close to the 410, just a little over 410. And so we've got to put a straight edge on here. And see, we've got to stay inside that anyways to meet that top. So if you lay that there, and then this straight edge, you go over just a tad. That lines us up really good right there with the top. Okay, so in theory, this is our line. Now if we put that right there, we're at about 4.9. So we can still have our 4.6 that we're looking to. We've still got at least 3 or 4 inches. Now, when you normally do this, and we gotta be careful, because if I put this together and I point this angel all into place, then there's a crack down here that we didn't account for, we're screwed. And we're not screwed a little bit, we're screwed a lot. Okay? So this, we've got, what I was planning to do was to come up, we're going to come up 6 inches. Okay, so we'll have 0.6 for the plinth. And then we've got from there to the top for the angel. And what I wanted to do was to come up here 6 inches and then go in about 1 inch to capture that. So we've got 6 inches, and then the check, we go in 1 inch, and then this edge goes to the top. So what we can do, we're gonna stay inside of that crack that we want to get our width. I'm gonna make sure down here we're all good. That's 48, 42. going to mark all this on here to try to get this in place so we understand what we're doing. Okay, and there's our 6-inch plinth. We can lay that out across the stone so we know where it is. Now we're going to take and capture our top. We're going to go in 1 inch from there. My grandfather told me if he caught me measuring off the end of a tape measure like this, he'd kick me right in the butt. He said, I'll come back from my grave and kick you. It's the wrong way to do it. So, measure from the interior point. And if we go right there, that captures the top perfect. So we can come over just enough. Get our line. We'll hold this on here really tight. Put our whole top. Now, normally when you point a job, and I can only tell you so much of this because a lot of this is based on experience and you'll make decisions. When we point a job, and I'll see if I can put a picture of Fantoni on here with his statue. The old way of doing it was that if you did a full round statue where you pointed a really big job where you were swinging compasses and enlarging something, you usually would leave the joint, the bottom would be all hand cut because you didn't have diamond saws and stuff like that. Wire saws don't cut that accurate. So, because they're just a twisted wire and you feed abrasive in and it drags it across the stone and wears through. So it creates a striations on it. So you cut the joint by hand, cut the bottom by hand. So they would leave a statue with extra material a few inches long on the bottom in case there was a problem, whether you made a mistake or there's a flaw in the stone. Usually it's if you make a mistake. So after the advent of diamond saws, I was trained that we would do something that was really like life size that we're swinging compasses on. We'd leave extra material on the back so we could sink it a little bit, and then before we cut anything under, if we had a problem, we could correct it and we could sink the whole job back into the stone another inch or two. Usually I'll leave about 4 inches on the stone. Okay? This stone is extra wide. So what I'm going to do is I'll cut her, I'll point her up, and I'll point half of her, the outside portion of her, to the outboard of the stone, this edge of it. I'll point her from there into the center. And once I'm happy with the center, then I'll start cutting away her other side. And if I'm not happy, I'll just shift her over 1 inch or so because realistically, I'm not going to make a 4-inch mistake. I've done this long enough, I'm not going to. So my extra assurance is going to be by shifting her to the left, and then we'll cut the rest of it out, if we need to. But for now, I should be able to cut this edge, have my 6-inch plinth with just 1 inch of overhang, and then have the figure, this is the back obviously, and then I'll have the figure, have her here, and then after we get her all happy, I'll drill off that whole corner. We'll show you how to do that with drills and a channel bar and stuff like that. So, but I could risk it and go right up to this edge, but up here at the top, and this is 6 foot right here. So this is technically higher than I need it to be, but this cuts under a little bit here, and I want to make sure that I've got good sound stone up here, so we can cut this off, and I'll mark this all the way through. I'll mark that, I'll mark the bottom, everything. I'll carry that on the joint so that I know where everything is, so when we flip it over, we can start working with what we've got. So, and this will all we got a lot of layout to do. So now because this this is important real estate, okay? This is a short, we're gonna axe this margin, this 6 inches wide. I could axe this right now in theory and we'll never touch it again. Be done with it for the whole job. But we're gonna be handling it and turning it, and the chance that we'll do something with this edge, it's got all these little tiny little fractures from the big saw. I'm gonna go ahead and tip it with a bush chisel, just so that it's got a bevel on it, and then hopefully it'll never be a problem. After you get a good bevel on it, go ahead and brick it. Keep your stone turned so you can maintain a nice straight face. Now, I could go ahead and do the whole back of it right now. I could go ahead and I could axe it up to about where I need to go, and axe this face and do all that. I'm not going to do that right now. We got to plan on how we're going to cut this stone, okay? And axing it would be fine, but I'll wait till I'm axing the whole thing, and then I'll be in the mood, because it's going to be a big flat surface, and if we axe it bad, it's going to look like crap. It's going to be all wiggly. So what we'll do, same kind of thing we've been doing before, okay? I could cut this in right now to start it, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to cut this in right now to start it, but I'm going to wait. The reason I'm going to wait is if I do something wrong and I have to shift this over a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch, I won't have already spent time axing it, okay? That's important, it's smart to do. We're going to cut these side faces. It'd be easiest if it was standing up, then it'd be like 5 feet up in the air. I'm not going to work on a little narrow stone standing 5 feet up on edge with wedges. No, that's too dangerous. So what we're going to do is we'll end up doing a panel from the front, because we'll flip this over. But we'll do a panel up to approximately the middle. And then when we turn it over, we'll cut the panel in the back. We'll meet in the middle, we'll pull the middle down, just like we've been doing. Same thing over and over. Well, I showed you on the other stone. We'll do the same thing on the edges here, because we're going to have to establish this line. We're going to mark this through to the front, because we're going to have to mark this edge. Mark it all the way across. Okay? And that's going to end up being the edge of our plaster on the front. And so we're going to have to cut this, put a couple of our foundation points, and we're going to have to cut part of this panel, this actual edge right here on the front. We're going to cut that in order to have some points to work from. We'll put a couple foundation points on it. We're going to put some nails in the plaster. They're going to be located along this line on the face of the stone. So we have to think about all this laying out. We'll go over laying out with you, but you know, I already, you know, I'll show you what I'm doing and explain it as we go. But for the most part now, I think we're ready to flip it over. We transferred all our lines. We've got this line transferred down the side on both ends, both edges. We got this transferred all the way through, and this transferred all the way through. And everything else, we're going to establish it as we cut it. So let's see how this stone flips over. Okay, I've got this all. Yeah, I always watch for tools, because you'll drop a tool in the dirt. That's why you rake your floor. Brand new 9-point. All right, I've probably got enough video to make this one last. This stone's all ready to turn over. Got the floor raked up. we'll end up picking it up. Have to move blocking around some so I can rig it. When I turn it, I'll be sure that there's some blocks underneath it, just in case something goes wrong and it falls. Maybe it only break my foot instead of cutting it off when it squishes it. And if something does slip, the block we don't have to dig out, but that's a benefit of the dirt floor, so we could dig out under it. But when you're moving a stone this big, if you don't respect it, it'll teach you to respect it. Should always make you think twice and then think again. So, but we'll flip this stone over, get on going on the next video. My name's Clint Button. I really appreciate y'all hanging around for 100 videos in this Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. And as I said, dedicate this to my masters, to Gary and Andy, Giuliano, Angelo, you know, Phil Piani trained Andy and told me things, and Henry Desereaux told me about sandblasting, and Henry LaPearle that taught me about polishing, Jeff Rousey here at Spartanburg that's been just a tremendous confidant that's helped me through so many little questions. And you just ask Jeff, and there's nothing I like better than riding to Alberton with Jeff and talking stones all the way down and all the way back about stuff nobody else cares about. So respect your elders, respect your masters, and choose your masters well. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculptor Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.